Hi, good afternoon or good morning, depending on your time zone, and thank you so much for joining today's HRMS Learning Series webinar on Crystal Reports. In this webinar, we'll define how data behaves in the various report sections and how to set up a parameter field to be used in Select Expert. With that, I'm going to turn it over to our presenter today, Lynn Klee.
Thanks, Ben. Hello, everyone. Before we dive headfirst into today's topic, there's a couple of items I'd like to cover. First off, your phones are muted. So if you have any questions, you can post them in the questions panel. So let's go to the GoToWebinar panel, questions section. I suggest undocking the question panel and expand it for better viewing. So grab that gray bar and drag it to the side and then resize. Otherwise, you may not be able to see our responses. Please do not use chat. Clay Stauffer and Robin Wright will be monitoring the questions throughout this presentation. Questions will be discussed at the end of this presentation, and a copy of these questions will be posted on the Sage City forum for the HRMS training. A link to the forum is located on the last page of the handout. Now, the handout is the next item I'd like everyone to locate. Back to the control panel, look for the handout section. I'd like everyone to click to download today's material if you haven't done so already. We'll be referring to this throughout the presentation, and this is a good area for you also to make notes. Now, this webinar will be recorded. Several days from now, this recording will be posted to the Learning Series registration page. So while everyone's going ahead and accessing the handout, I will take a moment to start today's recording. Welcome to the Sage HRMS Learning Series. My name is Lynn Klee, and I'm a trainer at Sage. Today's topics relate to SAP Crystal Reports. We're going to focus on report sections and parameter fields using the HR module. These topics we'll cover over the next 40 minutes or so are a small excerpt from a series of one-day Crystal training classes. As you can imagine, learning all the ins and outs of Crystal Reports cannot reasonably be covered in this one-hour webinar. Today's goal is to give you a glimpse into the world of Crystal reporting. We've got something for everyone. For the novice users, we're going to delve into report sections. What is their purpose and what happens when you insert a field on a different report section? For the more advanced Crystal users, we're going to create a parameter field to prompt us to select the employee status, whether it's active, LOA, or terminated. Now, for those of you that are interested in learning more about Crystal Reports, I'd like to take a few minutes now to show you where you can access these classes on Sage University. Going to go to sageu.com/HRMS. Scroll down, and we've got different sections in the middle of the screen here. I could log on. I could find information of training and certification by role. I can create a profile. I can even test my knowledge. I can view my training schedule. What I'm going to do today is I want to view training by subject, since I know what I want to look at is Crystal Reports. Down on the left-hand side, I'm going to select Sage HRMS Crystal Reports. And I'm going to refine my search. I'm going to search by HRMS Crystal Reports, and we've got 3 different levels. So I'm going to click Search. And here's the 3 one-day training classes. Now, level 1, laying the foundation. This is how to connect to the data. We'll start with a wizard, and by the end of the class, you'll be creating reports from scratch. The 3rd level is honing your craft. So this is where we get into the advanced features, subreports, complex formulas, running totals, and what we're going to do today, parameter fields. So we've got a little something from both of these classes in today's webinar. There's also an additional one, level 2, which is building your skills. We get into linking tables, creating formula fields. So if you're really gung-ho on Crystal and you want to learn more, I would suggest taking them in the order of the levels, level 1, 2, and then 3. Let's pop back to the presentation. And we'll take a look at what we're going to cover today. So after the session, we'll be able to describe the behavior of each report section, recognize the process of inserting a field from the Field Explorer, explain the result of placing fields in different report sections, we'll identify the use of a parameter field, and create a parameter field to use in the Select Expert. So again, just to recap how to find more additional training, I went to sageu.com/HRMS, view training by subject, selected Sage HRMS Crystal Reports, refine my search by HRMS Crystal Reports level, and then you would select on the training that you're interested in, and you can go ahead, find more information about it, or you can register if you're ready. Now, if you're going to register, please remember that customers with Gold support receive 50% off. The prices are discounted. If you register and you use a code called HRMS Resource, you will get an additional 10% off. If you don't have Gold support, that's fine. You're still going to get the 10% off. And again, here's a link to register for the courses. You go to sageu.com/HRMS. Now, in the handout on pages 1 through 3 is information on Crystal Reports training, along with the discount codes and a link to Sage University. So you don't have to write all this information down. Everything is in the handout. If for some reason you're unable to locate the handout right now, don't worry. When this recording is posted in a few days up on the registration page, a link to the handout will be available then. Today, I'll be using a blank report to pull fields from HR Personnel, which is our master HR table. So let's go ahead and get started. I'd like everyone to turn to page 4 in the handout. I'm going to bring up my image with Sage HRMS installed. Crystal is an application that you can download from the Sage knowledge base. You would log in, locate the software, and download it. You want to download and install it in the location where your HRMS client is installed. So I've already downloaded Crystal Reports. To access that from within HRMS, I'm going to go to Connected Services, and underneath Sage HRMS Tools, I'm going to select Crystal Reports. I'm going to use a blank report, and I want to connect to my master table, HR Personnel. This is a master table for HR. Once I locate that, I'm going to double click on it to select it, and we'll put it in the selected table column. Now you have to be patient. If I go ahead and double click again, I'll end up selecting it twice, and I don't want to do that. Now that my table's selected, I'm going to click OK. And over on the right-hand side, I have a Field Explorer. Now, if your Field Explorer is not open, I'm going to go ahead and close mine. You can reopen it by going to an icon underneath the Help menu bar. Looks like a little Excel spreadsheet. If you hover over it, it will say Field Explorer. So I'm going to click on that, and now my Field Explorer will open. Underneath my database fields, when I expand that, here's a table I've selected, HR Personnel. If I expand that, I can see all the fields located there. If I'm new to Crystal and I'm not really sure what the fields are, for example, underscore name 1, if I right-click on that field and browse data, I'll get a sampling. And I can see from browsing, it looks like it's last name, first name, middle name. If I close out of there, let's take a look at name 2. right-click, Browse Data, and this is first name, middle name, last name. I'm going to close out of there. And in the handout, the first thing we want to talk about is the report sections. The report header. So on the left-hand side is a label of my different sections. The white area to the right of that, I refer to as my working area. So we're going to go through the different report sections and how they behave when I insert a field on them. The report header, anything I insert there will appear once at the top of the first page only. So an example of that could be my report title. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to insert a text object, and I'm going to call this my Crystal report. It's going to be the title of my report, and it's going to appear on the first page only at the very top. The next section we have is the page header. The page header displays information that's going to appear at the top of each page. Now, what can you think of that what you want to appear at the top of every page? First thing that comes to my mind is column headings. You may have different ideas. Anything that you want at the top of each page, it could be a page number, the date, time, the location of where the report's saved, all sorts of information. The detail is the body of your report. So for example, if I want to insert that underscore name one, the employee's name on my report, I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to do a normal left click, drag and drop underscore name one to my detail section. Release my mouse, and I now have the field on my report. You'll notice in the Field Explorer, I have a little green check mark. That means that that field is now used in my report. If I want to see what the name looks like, I can refresh my report. To do that, at the top, there's an icon, two blue arrows circling each other. That's the refresh icon. When I click refresh, it's going to open up a second tab, which is my preview tab. And here I can see the name of my report appearing at the top of the first page. If I go to the second page, it's not there. In the detail of my report is the employees' names. Well, let's go back to the design view and continue looking at the different report sections. The next one is the report footer. Any information I insert here will appear once at the end of the report. So an idea of that could be any grand totals. So if I want to count the number of employees, I want that total at the end of my report. We also have something called a page footer. Anything I insert here will appear at the bottom of every page. Now, we do have some special fields over here in the Field Explorer, so I'm just going to collapse HR Personnel, and I'm going to go down and expand the special fields. Now, in my page footer, there's a couple things I may want to appear. I always like to see the page number, page 1 of 3 or 5 of 10. So I'm going to drag this field, page N of M, over to my page footer section. I'll release my mouse to insert the field, and I can either go to my refresh icon or click on the preview tab since I've already previewed it. If I scroll down to the bottom, there's my page numbers, and I'll just scroll through the different pages here. And indeed, I've got a total of 3 pages on my report. Let's go back to the design view. Now, when I create a report, these are the sections that default. There are a couple other sections that you can add, and they are the group. If I want to insert a group from the menu bar, I'm going to go into Insert, Group. Let's say I want to group my report by supervisor. So I'm going to scroll down till I find a field called P_supervisor, which is the supervisor's name. Click OK to select, and it's now inserted a group header and a group footer. I'm going to preview, and there's the supervisor's name, followed by the employees that report to him. So we've seen the different behavior of when we insert fields, but I want to show you some of the differences. If I take the name field, I'm going to go back up and expand my HR personnel. And let's say I drop it into the wrong section. I'm coming over here and I mean to drop it into the detail section, but I accidentally drop it into the group header. Well, we know by the definition of group header, it's only going to appear once at the top of the page. So what do you think it's going to look like? Let's find out. Let's click on preview. And the name field here is appearing at the top. Now, I'm sorry, I inserted it at the top of the group header. So each time at the start of the group, it's going to appear. Well, let's say I put it into the page header. Drag that up and preview is appearing at the top of this page. I have the first person here, Audrey. If I go to the second page, I have Adrian. So it's not exactly what I want it to do. I can always drag it back down to the section I want in the detail section, preview it, and now I have the information. But you'll notice something slightly different. Since I didn't originally insert it on the detail section, it didn't put in the title of the field at the top. So if I really wanted that title there, I could just delete the underscore name one field, and the easiest way to get it in is just to drag and drop it to the correct section. In this case, I really want it to be in the detail section. And now I've got my column heading on my page header. I'm going to delete those fields just because they're duplicate information. Another special field that I like to use is I do a lot of printing. So we have some fields here called the print date and print time. If I want that to appear at the top of each page, I can insert that in my page header. So now when I go back and I preview my first page, this is what it's going to look like. It's a good start to my report. Now, if your report contains multiple groups, you will have multiple group headers and group footers, one for each group. So I could go in and put in multiple groups if I want. In my case, I'm just going to keep with the simple report, and we'll just have one group by supervisor. On page 5 in the handout, the next topic I want to talk about is parameter fields. Now, a parameter field, what does it do? Well, it prompts you, the user, to enter specific information. So you may have someone running this Crystal report and they're really not familiar with Crystal, and they may not know to go into the Select Expert and modify the criteria for your report. So what's an example of a parameter field? I could do a parameter by date. I'm going to limit this to people that were only hired after a certain date or prior to a certain date. I could even create a parameter field for a cost of living. So I want it to prompt a report to say, what would it look like if I gave someone a 4% COLA, an increase? You can do that. As soon as you go to preview the report, you'll be prompted saying, hey, what would you like to modify, let's say, the annual pay by? And then you go ahead and enter your number, and then your report will reflect the results. So sometimes it'll do a lot more than just filtering your report. How do we access parameter fields? Well, I've got my Field Explorer open, so I'm going to collapse those special fields. And there's one called Parameter Fields. I'm going to right-click and select New. Just to make this easier to read, I'm going to go back to the design view. Let me just cancel it here. That looks a little bit easier on the eyes. Right-click, New. And we're going to talk about the fields, at least the fields that are going to be appropriate to the parameter field that I'm going to create. So the name of my parameter field, what do I want to call it? Well, the reason I'm going to create one is I want my report to prompt the user for the employee status. Do you want to see active, LOA, terminated, or any combination of those? So I'm going to call it my parameter employee status. The type field. Am I going to prompt them for currency, a date, a number? None of the above. I want it to be a string. This is a character field. And whether someone is active, LOA, or terminated is a string field. In the list of values, I have two options, and depending what I select here, it's going to change the options down below. I have the option of dynamic and static. So let's talk about dynamic first. Dynamic would be if you want a drop-down box or multiple elements. Maybe I want to prompt for an employee status and a supervisor. So I want to filter my report by a particular supervisor and only see active employees. A static I would use when I want to manually type the value. For our training purposes, I'm going to go with dynamic. The next field is prompt group text. Now this will display at the top of where we're going to select our employee status. So I'm simply going to tell someone to select employee status. Choose a data source. I've got the option of new and existing. If I choose a new data source, this is going to choose a field from any table in my report. Now, you would leave this blank if you want the user to enter data that's going to be outside of HRMS data. So that goes back to my example where I had the cost of living increase. We don't store a 4% cost of living or a 5%. So that's an example where you would use that. Existing is if you're looking to tie your parameter to an existing parameter field value. Now, in my case, I'm going to go with new. And down below, I'm going to select my field. I want it to prompt for the P_active field. I'm going to use the real field in the database. Now, some of you may notice that there are fields here that start with an underscore. Whenever I'm querying the data, my personal preference is I use the real field that's in the database. These underscore fields, they can reside in another database, but we just brought them in to be viewed in Crystal to make it more user-friendly. For example, earlier I inserted a field called underscore name one. That's actually 3 fields in the database that are combined. Employee's first name, last name, middle name. If I opened the table up in SQL, I would see 3 separate fields. I would not see a field called underscore name one. So just like we have underscore active, I'm going to go down, I'm going to use P_active. In the description, I want to link it to the description, underscore active. The parameter field. If I want to use a parameter to have a unique name, for example, using multiple parameter fields, P underscore EMPNO, the employee ID number, and P underscore level 1, which in my data is a division, I can label each one, the division and the employee number. Now, for right now, I'm just going to leave this as is. I'm just going to put in my value of P underscore active and link it to the description underscore active. Now, I can, if I want to, link to a parameter field. When I do have other options down below that I do want to show you. So if you scroll down, take a look at some of the options. I could change the prompting text. I could prompt with description only. I can allow multiple values. Now in my case, I do want to allow multiple values. So I'm going to single click and select true because I want to be able to select active and a leave of absence. Everything else looks good. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK. If I need to edit my parameter field, I can. I right click and choose edit. Cancel out of there. Now that I've created the parameter field, what's next? Well, I want this to filter the results on my report. So I'm going to go up to my filter icon, which is my select expert at the top. You'll notice that the field we've just created, this parameter field, isn't on my report yet, so it doesn't appear. And if I scroll down in HR personnel, my parameter field isn't here. So I'm going to have to go into the formula editor inside the select expert to access this. So for right now, I'm just going to click any field, click OK, till I'm inside the select expert. From here, I can access the formula editor. I'm going to go into my report fields and expand it by clicking the plus symbol. And here's my parameter field. Now, a parameter field will start with a question mark. That's how you know it's a parameter field. I just made it a little bit more user-friendly by calling it my parameter. Well, I'm going to create an expression, and I'm going to say, well, what field am I going to pull my values from? It's a field called P underscore active. So I'm going to open up my HR personnel, locate my P underscore active, double click on it to select it, and tell it that it's going to be equal to the parameter field. I'm just going to come up here and double click to select it. Whenever I create an expression, I like to check it. So at the top left, I'm going to click on my check icon, my X+2. No errors are found. Now, if I wanted to, I could have reversed this expression and say, okay, my parameter field equals P underscore active. Either way would still work. Go ahead and save and close. Click OK. Now, when I go to the Preview tab, I'm prompted, and here's my text, to select the employee status. And I want to select active and LOA. So I'm going to select active, LOA, so they are now in my selected values. Click OK. When I filter a report, a little tip that I always like to use is I like to insert the field on the report so I can prove it's pulling the information. I know the data, but you may not know the data. So let's insert that P underscore active. I'm just going to put it on the detail section of my report. And there's all my active and LOA. If I wanted the description on my report, I would use underscore active. Well, let's say I changed my mind. I don't want LOA employees on my report. I only want active. I'm going to go back up and refresh my report, or F5, and I want to select prompt for new parameter values. Click OK. Down at the bottom right, I'm going to click on Remove All, and I'm going to reselect Active. Or I could have just selected LOA and clicked Remove. Click OK, and now I have just my active employees. So here's the design of my report. Here's a preview. It's starting to look pretty nice now. But I want to drill in again the importance of the report sections. So there's one last thing I'd like to show you. I'm going to scroll up and collapse my HR personnel database, and I'm going to go back to my special fields. There's a field called record number. Now I'm just going to give myself a little bit of working area. So I'm going to left click, draw a box around these fields. I'm just going to move them a little bit to the right. Click somewhere else to deselect them. I'm going to go back here, select my record number, and I'm going to insert this on the detail section. Click Preview. Oh, this overlap. Let me clean that up a little bit. I'm going to put it over here on the right side. This should look better here. We have more room here. So now when I preview, here is a running count of the records, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. If I take that record number and I insert it on my group header, let's preview the report. It'll give me the count at the top. So this is my first, this is my 17th, 19th, and so on. If I insert this on my group footer, it'll give me a total at the end of that group. And remember, this is sort of a running total. So here's my 16th, my 18th, so forth. So there's a lot of features within Crystal that you can play with, and where you insert it on the report will make a big difference. If I take this record number and I put it on the last section, which is my report footer at the very end of my report, click Preview. Nothing here jumping out at me, so remember I have to go to my last page to see this. I'm going to click on the arrow to the right with the line beside it, and here's my field. So when you're first starting to work with Crystal, a little trick that I use is there's a lot of information on these reports. So I always click on the Design tab on the field I'm looking for, and notice how it has a little box around it. So this jumps right out at me, and I know it's my record number. So for example, if I wanted to quickly identify my grouping, I would click on that field, go to my preview, and again, here's that box around the supervisor. So to summarize it, that's in a nutshell the record section, how they behave when you insert different fields on it, what each section does. And we took a quick look at creating a parameter field. Once I've created my parameter field, you would go ahead and insert it on the Select Expert. This is the most common place that people use it. And remember to go into your formula editor. This is where you can locate your parameter field, and remember it will start with a question mark. If I look over to the right in my Field Explorer, notice I have that question mark. That's a symbol that it's a parameter field. Going to close out of here. And let's go back to the handout. So I've given everyone the steps on how to create parameter fields. We talk about the different sections. So if you want to take this handout, you can play with your data, create a report, have fun with it. There's one other thing I do want to cover, and that's on page 9, links and contact information. So this is very useful areas where you can find additional info. So the first topic we have is the Sage City HRMS forum. So this is a location where you can go to ask product questions. You can share tips and tricks with Sage peers, partners, and pros. So if you've learned something really neat with Crystal and you want to share it with others, this is the place to go and talk about it. Or if you want to ask other people, how have they retrieved this information from the report? Now remember, you've also got support. You can reach out to them. They're not going to create an entire report with you, but they'll help you if you're having problems with, how do I sort my report? Or maybe this parameter field, it's just not working like you want it to. If you have gold support, you can schedule up to 30-minute free training session with support, and they can help you with your Crystal report. They just can't create the entire thing with you. The next item we have in the topic is the questions and answers relating to the Sage HRMS Learning Series. So if we go out to Sage City, let me just bring up my browser. We were on Sage University. Now I'm going to go to sagecity.com. I'm going to go into my support groups for the US and select Sage HRMS. I'm going to go to the Forums tab. We've got several different discussion areas. We've got one for Sage HRMS, another for AberSuite. We've got announcements, and then we've got the Sage HRMS training. If I go in here, I can see, oh, we've got weekly challenge questions. We can actually see a post saying, hey, we've got 2 days left until the HRMS Learning Series. So again, a lot of information out here on Sage City. We have Sage University, which we looked at earlier. You would go to sageu.com/HRMS. This is where you can log on to Sage University, do trainings and certifications, view training by subject, create a profile, test your knowledge, and view our training schedule. If you need to reach out to Sage University, if you need help with anything, we've included their telephone number and email address. We've got the discount code. Remember, it's HRMS Resource, where you'll get 10% off your instructor-led training. You can register or access any on-demand recordings. We've included the link in the handout. So if you want to listen to this recording a week, 2 weeks from now, just go to the registration page. And that's at the getsage.com HRMS Learning Series. Remember, this recording will be posted there in several days along with the handout material. The last item that can be helpful, and I'm going to bring up HRMS for this last one. Minimize Crystal. And I'm just going to pull up an employee. Nancy will do. In different areas of the software, you'll notice an icon. This is a graduation cap. This is a link to Sage University to browse for training on the related area in HRMS. So if I want to say, hey, what training opportunities are there relating to the employees' pages? I would click on this icon. It's going to go out to the internet. And there's a couple of items here. I've got e-learning, which is anytime learning. So remember, if I've got that gold support, that this is free, I can come in here. Gives me information about this. This anytime learning video is 8 minutes long. If I go back, I have something else that is the HRMS Generalist. This is a learning package. And I can see here that it's 15 videos that will take approximately 2 hours and 40 minutes. And when I scroll down, I can find the area of my choice, whatever I'm interested in. Let's close out of there. And let's go back to the presentation. So in summary, we've seen how each report section behaves. We've created a parameter field, and we've used it in the Select Expert to prompt the user to enter information that further filters the report. Remember, this is especially handy if the end user running the report may not be that familiar with Crystal. Now, the material for today's training was derived from HRMS Crystal Reports Level 1, laying the foundation for the report sections, and then also Level 3, honing your craft for parameter fields. For your training needs, you can go to sageu.com/HRMS to register for training. Be sure to use that code HRMS Resource for 10% off instructor-led training. And this is in addition to the 50%. And if you don't have gold support, take that 10%. It's like Black Friday that's coming up. Sale, 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 special. I love discounts. I love things that are free. I've got all the links for you here on the free stuff, all our little goodies. You don't have to wait for Black Friday. If you have ideas for topics that you'd like to see in an upcoming learning series, if so, I'd like to take the opportunity now so that you can post them in the questions panel. Or if you think of something later on, post it on the Sage City forum. What I'd like to do now is to review the posted questions. I'm going to turn the presentation over to Clay and Robin. What do we have?
Hey, Lynn, we have some great questions that are actually still coming in. So I'm going to start at the top and then work my way down and answer at least one of those questions live without typing it up first. So the first question is, when you were building the parameter field, one of our ELITE attendees noticed that the prompt group text.
Sorry, Clay, I can't hear you.
It looks like he dropped off the phone. So I guess I'll take over. The question was, the prompt group text field isn't in the prompt group text in the paperwork. And his response to that was that, let's see, the handout, the list of values is static, and you were doing a dynamic version, which was fancier. And so I think that answered Christy's question. We had someone who was inquiring about an example for how to pull payroll information. Natalie asked that question. And Clay responded by that it would be a future learning series would be a good idea for that, but that it's basically a different set of tables that you hook up to. But that he would present that to you to do a new learning series on. The next question was, let's see, the training for 30 minutes, that's part of the goals report. Can it be used for Crystal reports? And the response for Meredith was yes, it certainly can. You can ask whatever you want to be trained on during that 30 minutes for the gold support benefit. The next question from Natalie was, let's see, can you tell me the field that you pull the payroll information? And it's, let's see, more pulling from the payroll tables, which we know is a different set of tables than HR. And the next three questions have not been answered, so I'll present them to you, Lynn, and let's see if we can get some answers.
Well, Robin, why don't we hold back? Because while you were talking, I was just sort of playing with the very first question. That saying, hey, in the handout, it was slightly different than what I was demoing in the parameter field.
Okay.
And that's correct. There's so many different ways to do it. If the best way to learn is to come in here and play with it. So what I did was I came in here and I said, okay, I want to change the list of values to something that's static instead of dynamic. And I selected my field P_active, and then I linked it to the description just to be more user-friendly. I mean, I'm using a pretty straightforward field where I know what A, L, and T is, but some of the other fields may not be so obvious. And what I'm going to do here is static means it doesn't change. I have to pre-call everything. Dynamic is updating. So if I was doing it by employee type and I added or not employee type, but a different field, a division, and I added a new division. If it was static, that new division wouldn't be in my list. If I choose dynamic, it will be. And by static, I can actually predefine what I want. So an example here is I'm just going to take a moment, since we have time today, and I'm going to add LOA. If I want to call it leave of absence, I could have done that also. And T for terminated. Now, I always like to go down here and make sure that allow multiple values is set to yes. Otherwise, they would only be able to select one. Now, if that's the way you want it, but I'm going to say allow multiple values is true. I want to be able to select active and LOA. I'm going to go ahead and change this. I've just fine-tune my parameter field, so I don't need to go into the select expert and change anything there. So now I'm going to go ahead and refresh my report with the two blue arrows. And I get the same experience here, but I've just created it differently, like behind the scenes. Now I do have the choice if I wanted to and enter my own value. And again, you can customize this to not have this appear. So again, take time, maybe today or tomorrow, jump into parameter fields and start playing with them. They're a lot of fun. And if you're not really sure how to do something or you haven't been able to quite figure it out, reach out to support or go up to Sage City, do a post on there. I monitor that all the time. I'm advertised as Lynn C, so that's me. Say hi to me. I'm out there. Robin, what's the next question we have that you wanted to go into? That Clay, are you back with us yet?
He is not showing up as back yet. So
okay.
I will ask the next question.
Okay, great.
Let's see, can we save a report we created so it's usable via the Sage HRMS client? And I think wouldn't that be putting it on a menu? Putting a Crystal report on a menu? That's what it sounds like.
I'm not sure what they mean by Sage HRMS client, but if it is via the Crystal menu, yes, you can. So it's referred to as something called Crystal Viewer. That's where a user can actually run a report and they do not need Crystal installed on their workstation. And they simply run the report. They can't design it. They can't make any changes. Now, if there was a parameter field, they would receive the parameter field that we just created here today, prompting them for active, LOA, and terminated. When you save the reports themselves, if I go up to File, Save As, you want to make sure that you save it inside something called Custom Reports. And this will be on the server where the HRMS application is installed. So if you're not sure where that is, I always search for the word Custom Reports with no space, and then you go to the appropriate folder. In my case, I'm going to go to HR, and you want to make sure that you save your report here. That way, when you're using Crystal Viewer and you're customizing Sage HRMS or Sage ABRSuite, you can bring that report in, and you've got it saved on the server in the location where it needs to be, where everyone should have access.
So hopefully that sounds like that answered Eric's question. Let us know, Eric, if that answered your question. Our next question is from Stacy, and it says, information regarding the data dictionary, definitions of each table and field. So I think she just wants to know where she can find the definitions for
Sure,
the various tables and fields.
definitely. Yep, I'd be glad to show you. So I'm going to pop back to Sage HRMS, and from the navigation pane, I'm going to select Reports, and underneath System, there's something called Data Dictionary Reports. So this will give me a list of tables to connect to. So today I've been demoing HR, but let's take a look at payroll. I'm going to go into my files list because the first thing we have to do is we have to tell where do we want to connect. I connected earlier to HR personnel, which was the master for the HR module. But what if I have payroll? What's the master for payroll? I'm going to click preview. So I've selected files list and the module payroll. So I'm not mixing in all my HR tables because I want to focus on it. I'm going to make this screen bigger for everyone. And the second column, DOS file name, this is what Crystal is going to recognize everything as. And here's all my payroll tables. Now, if it's PR, it means it's specific to payroll. If you see HP, it means it's shared with HR. Now, the master table is UP EMPL. So if you see it on the screen and I go by it, please yell at me. Now, I'm using UP because it starts with US payroll. If you had Canadian payroll, it would start with CP. So it would be UPEMPL. It's not jumping out at me here.
It's not jumping out at me either. There it is. No.
There it is.
Yeah.
US employees. And in the first column, it's just programmer has called this P205. So this would be the master table. But this is a great way. If I wanted something to do with employee taxes, this is a table I would pull from UPEMPT. This is another common one that's used in payroll is the earnings and deductions, UPEMPD. If I want to find more about those particular fields, and they range from P204 through P207, I'm going to close out of here, go back to the data dictionary report, and this time I'm going to select my fields list and preview. And I'm not sure how far down, but it seemed like it was pretty near the end. But essentially, you would just go back to you located that number, and then you would see all the different fields in that table. Tells you the type of field, how long it is, any decimal places, and then it gives you the English description.
Cool.
Any other questions?
So we have, I see Clay is back. We are on, let's see.
Now, just to continue with the theory of that last one, you can also access the data dictionary through the online help. There's different ways to access it.
Yeah. Now, Laura had a follow-up to the Crystal Viewer. Basically, where is Crystal Viewer?
Hey guys, I'm back. Sorry about that. For some reason, it dropped me. Hopefully you heard most of my spiel. But yes, to follow back through, we did get a question about where is the Crystal Viewer. And the good news is if you drop a Crystal report in Sage HRMS under one of the menu options and then click on it, the Crystal Viewer is embedded. However, if you would like to use the Crystal Report Viewer outside of Sage HRMS, it is a download from the Crystal Reports website.
Alrighty, I think we have another question. This one from Stacy. Let's see, and the best to link tables between payroll and the employee data.
Yep. And again, I apologize if that didn't come through, and I was kicked out from the WebEx, but there is a way to link the payroll fields together and tables together. That is through the employee field. Now, there is also a way to link those two fields, so you can link a payroll field and an HR field together, and that's a little bit more involved, but that's using the EMPNO field on the HR side to the employee field. So definitely, if I was kicked out before I said it, that we do have that class, the using Crystal Reports with Sage HRMS Payroll, we go into that fully, as well as you will, in a hands-on environment, build out those particular fields.
And I think that answers all the questions. Lynn, you answered some of those verbally, so we'll have to fill those in for our Sage City upload.
Absolutely. And once again, I apologize. Not sure how logged into my answering questions I was kicked out, but like Robin and I'm sure Lynn said, we'll have all of these answers up on Sage City.
All right. Thanks, Clay and Robin. So let me go ahead and I'll minimize Crystal. So again, the Sage City URL is here, and it's also on that last page 9 of the handout. Go into the forums and go to Sage HRMS training. Just want to remind you, if you have any ideas for any upcoming learning series, please post them in the questions section. We'd love to get them, to hear from you. We've got 3 topics. I've presented all 3. We are waiting to create new material. So if you want a session, maybe another Crystal session, love to do that for you. Give us your ideas. Maybe, you know, the W-4, it's new, it's coming up. Maybe you want information on W-4s, W-2s. So again, love to hear from everyone here.
Hey, Lynn,
Yes.
do we have time for a clarification? We had, Laura didn't understand what you meant regarding the Crystal Viewer. And also, if I save reports so others can see them, where do they go? And I think she just missed the pathway that you gave out.
Okay, so where you should save them is you want to save them on the server where the HRMS application is saved. And there'll be a folder called Custom Reports with no space. You want to search on that server for Custom Reports if your IT person isn't sure where the application's installed. And inside there will be subfolders, for example, for HR, for time off. So if it's an HR report I'm creating, I would pop over and save it in that HR folder. And what I can do is I'll do a post on an example of this report I created, how to actually put it inside HRMS. So give me a couple days, probably Monday or Tuesday, I'll get that up there on Sage City.
Great, thank you.
All right, just checking in at the time right now. It's pretty much time to wrap everything up. We're getting close to the top of the hour. Just a reminder, a recording of today's webinar will be uploaded to the Learning Series registration page, and a repeat of today's webinar will be hosted on Thursday, December 5th. So again, same content, but if you do have other questions, you can bring them, chat with us. Remember to send in your ideas for the next topic in the Learning Series. And beyond, on behalf of myself, Robin, and Clay, I'd like to thank everyone for attending today's learning series on Crystal Reports. Goodbye for now.
Oops.